Hi, this is the Brazilian Panties sewing tutorial. To start sewing you need stretch fabric, I'm using mesh, non-stretch lace or embroidered mesh or stretch lace depending on pattern you're using. I'm using daffodil Brazilian Panties pattern, so I'm using embroidered mesh, cotton jersey for gusset, Picot elastic and thread matching the fabric. First check the test square on your pattern, it must measure 3 by 3 centimeters. Next, if you are sewing without an overlock, make the side seams 14 mm to create a French seam. And also make this seam on the back piece 14 mm too. Cut out gusset and front piece from stretch mesh. Cut out cotton jersey gusset. Cut out two back pieces from non-stretch or stretch lace or non-stretch embroidered mesh. Place the back pieces wrong sides together and stitch them with a straight stitch with 7 mm seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance to about 2 to 3 mm. Then press the seam to one side and then fold it right sides together and press it again to make it easier to enclose the raw edges. Stitch it with a straight stitch with 7 mm seam allowance. Next, place the front piece right sides together with a gusset. Then place the back piece right sides together with the gusset from your main fabric. And as you can see, back piece a little bit smaller than the gusset, so match the centers of the pieces. Then place the cotton jersey gusset right side to the wrong side of the front and back piece, and it's also a little bit smaller than front and back piece, so match the centers of the pieces. Stitch it with a straight stitch, turn it right side out, press it and top stitch 1 mm from the seam on the gussets. Place the side seams wrong sides together. As you can see, back piece a little bit smaller than the front piece. You need to match waist lines together, and here on the leg opening you will have a little bit space. This space needs to attach the elastic. Stitch it with a straight stitch with 7 mm seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance to about 2 to 3 mm. And then do the same as you did with the back piece. Press the seam to one side, then press it right sides together. Stitch it with a straight stitch with 7 mm seam allowance. Next, let's do the leg opening. I'm sewing daffodil Brazilian Panties, so I'm taking pattern guide for this pattern. Take the measure for the leg opening for your size and multiply it by the stretch coefficient of your elastic. Mine is 0.9, and seam allowances are not included in this calculation, so I add 4 centimeters for the seam allowance to make it easier to attach the elastic. Measure and cut Picot elastic to the calculated length. I make the second one of the same size. Mark the center of the elastic and mark 2 cm seam allowance on each side. We will attach the elastic only for the front piece and gusset, so find the middle of the leg opening. Place the elastic wrong side to the right side of the front piece like this, leaving a 2 cm seam allowance. Then match the middle of the elastic with the middle of the leg opening. Place the elastic on the gusset like this, also leaving a 2 cm seam allowance. And I also pin the gussets together to secure them. Stitch it with the zigzag stitch so that the needle lands into a scallop of the elastic on the left side. I also have separate tutorial how to sew the elastic. Trim all the excess fabric which remaining when the elastic is folded to the wrong side. On the side seam you need to fold the elastic to the wrong side like this and stitch it with a narrow zigzag stitch to cover this edge of the elastic. And on the gussets you need to do the same thing. Fold the elastic like this and stitch it with a narrow zigzag stitch somewhere here, or you can cover the edge of the elastic with a narrow zigzag stitch. Next, fold the elastic like this on the gusset. You can hand stitch it if you need. And you need to start stitching from here, make a back stitch and then sew it with a zigzag stitch on the second edge of the elastic. So let's do the waistband. Measure and cut the elastic to the calculated length. I will sew the elastic in a circle. I place the edges of the elastic like this and sew them with a narrow zigzag stitch to cover the edges of the elastic. I make one narrow zigzag stitch here and one narrow zigzag stitch here. I want to place the point where I join the elastic at one of the side seams. Find the middle and the quarters of the elastic. I'm using the point where the elastic is joined at the starting point and folding the elastic here to find the middle. And then I place the point where we join the elastic at one of the side seams, wrong side to the right side of the panties. Then I pin the first quarter to the middle of the front piece, the middle of the elastic to the second side seam, and the second quarter to the center back seam. Stitch it the same way as the leg opening. That's it, your panties are ready.